My guest today is Mitzi Perdue, a Harvard graduate who is a writer, speaker, and author. She was previously on LIFEOLOgy Radio when she published her award-winning book, The Frank Perdue Way, which shares the secrets to her late husband's success. In today's episode, we talk about Mitzi's mission to help clear landmines in Ukraine and how you can help as well. Welcome back to LIFEOLOgy.
Oh, absolute joy to be back. Thank you for having me.
I am really excited about this. It was interesting when your publicist, Jordan, when she sent me the information about you. Of course, I was super excited to have you come back on my show, but also the initiative that you're making to help clear landmines in the Ukraine. And I definitely want to talk more about that. But before we do, give me a little bit of update on how the book you did, The Frank Perdue Way, how did that go? How is publications and how is all that?
Well, out of a category that had 20,000 competition at Amazon, it made number 5. So I was real happy with that.
Wow, Mitzi, that's amazing. Congratulations.
but it led to something even bigger, because you've heard of Mark Victor Hansen, the chicken soup for the soul guy.
Yeah, he's been on my show.
He read my biography of Frank Perdue, and that led to my writing his biography. I'm the first person to have written a biography.
Really?
Of a man who's sold 500 million books. So, boy, do I feel good about his.
I would feel really good about that too. Yeah, Mark and Chris are on my show. They're fantastic. They talk about their book. I think it was called Ask. One of their latest books. It was fantastic. Loved it. They're always welcome back on my show. And so it's good to see that you're rubbing elbows with fantastic people like that as well. So with the book, real quickly, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just asking permission to boast, because that book the book on Mark Victor Hansen, it has won 10 National Book Awards for Best Biography.
Wow, Mitzi, look at you. Cool? That's amazing. That's going to be number 1 very soon as well, I'm sure.
Well, we hope.
Now let's transition into something a little bit more serious. Of course, I usually don't put a timestamp on my interviews, but just so we have purposes so people understand where we are today. It's currently March 30th, 2023. And so unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is still going on. Can you tell us, how did you connect with Halo Trust USA, and how did this initiative, how did it really resonate with you?
Okay, it happened from my point of view the neatest way. I love my career as a writer because it leads to extraordinary things, including Mark Victor Hansen. But in this case, I had written an article on human trafficking in Ukraine, because human traffickers they come out of the woodwork when there are people who are vulnerable. Yeah, I wrote an article on this for Psychology Today, and the title of it had the word Ukraine in it and the word human trafficking. Well, the head of the Kyiv region police, this is a man who has 6,400 people under him, he had written his master's thesis as a policeman on human trafficking, and my article somehow got into his hands. Yay. And pretty soon, like 10 days later, I got a Zoom request to talk with General Andrei Nebitov. So here I am sitting in my little office, and I'm getting a phone call from Ukraine, and he invited me to come see for myself what I'd written about. So 10 days later, I'm in Ukraine. And the jump from that to landmines is, I've written 20 stories on trafficking and other aspects of Ukraine. But the part that just moved me to change my life was becoming aware of the problem of landmines. The Russians are so incredibly vicious about it. Like, here's what they do. They'll put landmines in playgrounds, and they'll be disguised as like a teddy bear or a doll.
Oh my gosh.
Or other things. I've seen this. Another thing that they do in high schools, if you have an old beat up iPhone, they can take it apart, put plastic explosive in it.
Explosives.
Put it back together again. And then you, as a high school kid, you turn on the iPhone, and the act of that makes it blow up in your face. But that's not even the end of it. My background, I bet people wouldn't know this, but for a good bit of my life, I was a rice farmer. And that makes me
really?
that makes me endlessly interested in agriculture. Plus, my late husband, Frank Perdue, was in the chicken industry. So, agriculture catches my attention. While I was in Ukraine, I learned that 10% of the agricultural land of Ukraine has been landmined so that it can't be used. The Russians each day, they use rockets to do it like on an industrial scale. They'll send off, say, 50 rockets at a time, and each rocket has 75 landmines in it, and they just spray it over agriculture fields. And they continue doing this every single day that the war goes on. These trucks, you've seen HIMARS missiles, those trucks that have, and I'm not sure of the number of rocket tubes they've got on them. To me, it looks like 50, but I'm prepared to be wrong.
Sure.
Well, these distribution vehicles for landmines, they look a little bit like the HIMARS vehicles, and it's horrendous because, say, you're a farmer, and there's 1,000 landmines on your 40 acres. You can't farm. There goes your living. But that's not the end of it, because that also means that Ukraine isn't getting the income from agriculture. 40% of their income is agriculture. And then on top of that, there are countries like Indonesia, Bangladesh, Egypt that depend on, like, for example, wheat or cooking oil from Ukraine. So this problem of landmines is just staggering.
Pervasive. Yes.
Pervasive. And let me add one more horrible ingredient to the mix. I'll bring some hope in a moment, but if you're in an area that's infested with landmines, you've almost certainly got PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because you can't know when you go out that you're going to come back. And maybe even worse, supposing you've got kids, you can't know that your child or other loved ones isn't going to step on a landmine.
Yeah, well, it's just going, I mean, you said so much here, and I'm sure my viewers and listeners are like, oh my gosh. I mean, I, as an American over here, I live in my little bubble and I know about the war, but I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'm sure many people like myself are very sheltered when it comes to that. So thank you so much for your work to help, obviously just to educate us, but also all the work that you're doing. Now, when they shoot the landmines out, so it obviously lands, and then when it lands, wherever it is, you said 75 and per rocket. So obviously they don't blow up. So they don't blow up, but they're there. Can you see them when they land? Obviously you can see when it lands, but you don't know where they've scattered though, correct?
Well, this war is different from any war that's ever been, at least on the scale of the landmines, because some you can see, some you can't see. But they aim them at, or they plant mines in urban areas, and sometimes they're just extremely cleverly disguised. I've seen ones, they're about the size of your palm, and say they land in a playground. In a few hours, they're disguised to look like leaves, and if some other leaves blow on top of them, you don't know they're there. If they're landing on a field, let's say it's a field that's been planted, you never know they're there. But when you go to try to harvest your field, it's going to blow up. And when I've been driving in Ukraine, and I've now spent 10 days total, I've seen, I'm going to guess, by eyeballing it, that I've personally seen thousands of acres of unharvested sunflowers. The sunflowers go into sunflower oil, but you can't harvest them if you can't see where the landmines are. But I was starting to say that this is different from any war that's ever been, because first of all, on the scale, the number of landmines, like millions, but then on top of that, they go after the urban areas, where there are lots of people. They go after the farming areas where there's food that people need, and then they also go after the shipping lanes. So,
wow.
I mean, it's evil on a scale that you can't imagine.
Yeah, it is. Without going into the political aspect of it, but the humanitarian aspect, sure people listening to this can't imagine the evil of wanting to kill kids or just blow people. I just don't understand it. I recently, maybe 6 months ago, I had a woman on my show. Her company has an orphanage in the Ukraine, and she was telling me about how when the missiles would come and hit all around them, the kids were able to distinguish between a Ukraine missile and a Russian missile, which is, a 6-year-old child knowing that difference of that. I mean, it's devastating to recognize that. But yeah, the PTSD aspect that you're talking about, I mean, all these little kids, all these people over there, before were living their life, and all of a sudden now to have so much trauma around them, I can't imagine how that affects them, their country as a whole, of so much fear. I mean, that's a form of terrorism, but it's astounding.
Actually, that's one of the motivations. The Russians would like to demoralize the Ukrainian people, and terror is alas, an effective tool for doing it. But I would love to transition to some of the more hopeful part of it.
Yes, please do.
There's an organization. It's the oldest and largest mine clearing organization in the world. It's called the Halo Trust. And possibly you're aware of it because if you're old enough, you know that Princess Diana brought attention to mine clearing back 30 years ago. Well, it was the Halo Trust that was the group behind her. And they've, in the 30 or so years since, they've developed tremendous expertise, and there's wonderful stories about how they go about mine clearing, including of the 700 Halo Trust employees that are there right now. 95% of them are all women, and that's because they very deliberately want to help women in a war situation have income, because if your husband's off fighting at the front or maybe even deceased, you need income. So that's one of the things they do. But there's more. To me, it's really exciting that there's fabulous technology for mine clearing. Let's start with mine sniffing dogs. A dog can detect they're of explosive odors. There's 6,000 that we know of. Dogs can be trained to detect every single one of them. Wow. Then there are robot dogs that can sort of gallop across a field and see things that even a real dog couldn't see. They've got like X-ray vision or heat sensitive vision. There are drones that can detect and map where landmines are. And I have created a crowdfunding effort to raise $300,000 to help fund more landmine clearing in Ukraine. And anybody who wants to support it, it's donorc.com/Ukraine. And anybody who goes there and gives even $5, you can help prevent like a kid having his foot blown off. The amount of good that they can do is just spectacular. And for that $300,000, it will pay for 18 women to spend half a year removing mines. And it's just spectacular. And then I'm monologuing, forgive me.
No, it's totally fine. I want to hear more about this. Well, I was looking at the crowdfunding page, and I think as of today, you have about $84,000, $85,000 that have been funded. I know once it reaches $100,000, it'll be matched by $100,000. So then there's going to be more. We have another 100,000 to go, and I'm very hopeful that my viewers and listeners will be a part of this as well. I wanted to jump back into this. The individuals, the women and men who clear these landmines, such courage that they have to go in there with a 50% chance of, is it going to go off? Is it not going to go off? I'm sure technology is greater, so perhaps it's not 50% of it being to detonate or not, but still such courage that they have to be able to not only remove it to help their countrymen. I mean, I think that's such a noble and wonderful thing. It's unfortunate they have to be in situations like this. How many landmines have they cleared so far?
Oh, that would be awful hard to say. I'm going to guess many hundreds of thousands, but wow. I'm not sure that they tally each well, possibly somebody knows. I don't know, but I do know that they're very active and working hard on it. And I'm going to know so much more about it in a couple of months because I'm going to return for the third time to Ukraine to attend, drum roll please.
I know, right? That's wonderful.
Landmine clearing school. There are schools that teach you how to clear landmines, and the Halo Trust has one. And I already know that some really cool things. Oh, and they're kind of technical, but here's one. Not that you ever need to know this, but
I hope not.
They know exactly, say, if you're 6 feet away from a landmine and it goes off, they know how fast the explosive is going to carry the shrapnel. And I'm going to be making up the figures, but I'm going to be directionally accurate. Supposing that, and I might even hit it right, supposing it's traveling at 400 meters per second.
Okay.
They have protective gear that will protect you at 1,000 meters per second.
Wow.
So they really know what they're doing. If you've been studying this, and they're academic people who study this, there's just so much knowledge and experience that, although I do think it takes courage, I also believe that if you know what you're doing and you follow the rules and do it just right, my personal feeling when I'm going to be at the landmine clearing school, I think I'm in more danger in the subway in New York than I am at the landmine clearing school.
That's fair. Okay, that's good to know.
Okay, and it's not that the landmines aren't dangerous. It's just that they now know incredible amounts about how to be safe while you're doing it.
Yeah. And it sounds like the people, obviously, if a child or a person sees something or not aware of it and then it goes off, obviously that's very different than the people at the landmine school and people at Halo Trust diligently looking for it, finding it, and then being able to deactivate it. And so it's wonderful that they're able to do that. Well, the goal of Halo USA, Halo Trust USA, are they obviously want to clear all of it, but with all the influx of landmines being dropped every single day, is there hope that they'll eventually be able to get it all?
Well, that's one of the greatest evils of landmines because I think nobody can tell you exactly how long before Ukraine is cleared, but I've heard people guess 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
that's horrible.
It's just spectacularly evil what the Russians are doing. And we've got to get them out of there. I've talked with one guy whose specialty is clearing landmines. And here's what he said. And I assume he's exaggerating or speaking in hyperbole, but he said the best defense against, or the best way to do something about landmines is an Abram tank. And I said, what do you mean by that? And I'm thinking, does he mean a tank going across the fields? And he said, no, an Abram tank. If we give the Ukrainians enough of them, it will shorten the war. And that means less time for the Russians to keep laying more landmines.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Yeah. That's a tactic. Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's unfortunate. How can my viewers and listeners, how can they be a part of this? How can they help give to Halo Trust?
Okay, I would absolutely adore if people will give any amount. I mean, I'd love large amounts, but small amounts really, really count. $5, the cost of a Starbucks Bente. Here's where to go and what to do. Donor, as in giver, donor, DONOR, C, as in I see you. So donor C, one word, .com/Ukraine. And that will take you to my landmine clearing campaign. And the super thing is, whatever you give, I mean, I'm grateful for large amounts, but I'm very grateful for small amounts because when I return to Ukraine, I'll get to say, look at all the hundreds of people Americans who really care about you and want to do something to help Ukraine. And this is a way. And I've also talked with people who have made donations, and they say they just feel so good about it afterwards.
Yes. And it's obviously been vetted through all the different organizations. I looked at that, obviously, you would not be attached to anything that's not, but it's vetted. It's 100% secure. highly endorse you. And I definitely want my viewers and listeners to go to donorc.com/Ukraine and be able to donate as well. Unfortunately, our time is up, Mitzi. Thank you so much. Is there anything more you want to tell us? One more minute of any trivia or anything you want to tell us how people can help, or anything you want to just encourage us about?
Well, speaking just from my own remembrance of how things are, when I hear something on television or radio or wherever once, I often don't have a pencil handy fast enough. So I'm going to repeat: donor, DONORCSEE.com/Ukraine. And again, do it and you're going to feel good about it.
Perfect. Yes. My viewers and listeners also know that if I can't find this information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmiller.lifeology.com, and I'll link you with Mitzi and Halo USA as well. Thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on my show today.